the unforgiving winter of 1862, or perhaps the early breaths of 1863, a clergyman hailing from Taos bore witness to a dark tale of malevolence that would set ablaze the haunting saga of the Old West's first set of serial killers. The ominous narrative unfolded as one Juan Gonzalez, your average everyday freight runner, was ambushed on a desolate road. Faceless marauders descended upon him with an unsparing brutality, beating him into submission and fastening him to his hapless wagon. Horses were wrested away, and the wagon's cargo vanished into the shadows. Gonzalez, left battered and tethered, pointed a trembling finger at two enigmatic figures as the architects of his torment. The clergyman, bearing the weight of this harrowing account, urgently dispatched word to Santa Fe, triggering a cascade of events that summoned the scrutiny of military sentinels. Fort Garland stirred, and Lieutenant Nicholas Hott, at the helm of the 1st New Mexico Cavalry, embarked on a mission to unmask the malefactors. Soon thereafter, the cloak of anonymity shrouding the assailants was lifted, revealing the ominous duo, Felipe and Vivian Espinoza, the genesis of the dread-laden epithet, the Bloody Espinozas. In the frigid embrace of mid-January 1863, the cavalry advanced upon the Espinozas' enclave. Lieutenant Hott, harboring aspirations of a peaceful apprehension, sought dialogue with Vivian. The turbulent winds of the Civil War, then in its second year, provided a convenient guise, a tale of military recruitment. Vivian, perhaps sensing a storm on the horizon, deferred the conversation to the following day. 5 days elapsed before the cavalry revisited the Espinozas' domain, shedding the illusion of recruitment. Hott and his ally, Deputy Marshal George O. Austin, found the brothers ensconced within. A room became a temporary jail, but the Espinozas, undeterred, orchestrated a daring escape. Breaking through walls, they armed themselves with an arsenal that included bows and arrows. They wouldn't be taken away without a fight. In the ensuing melee, Hott ordered the homestead to be set ablaze. Arrows were unleashed, and chaos enveloped the frozen tableau. The encounter, a tragic comedy of errors, bore witness to a soldier's demise. Hott, in a desperate bid for control, discharged his weapon ineffectually, shooting himself in the forehead, and eventually succumbing to the wound inflicted by his own misfire. Pursuit spilled over the icy Conejos River, where Austin's steed faltered, snapping his leg above the ankle. All the while, Felipe and Vivian dashed into the formidable embrace of the San Juan Mountains, their pursuers' chase ultimately waning into futility. In the aftermath, the punitive vengeance was swift and merciless. Homes were consumed by flames, and the Espinozas' possessions, a lifeline to survival, were ruthlessly seized. Cows, oxen, beds, and water resources were all but collateral in the cold calculus of frontier justice. This left the brothers' kinfolk in abject destitution, an insidious echo of retribution that reverberated far beyond the scorched homestead. Yet, amidst the smoldering ruins, the army unwittingly sowed the seeds of an unrestrained vendetta. Stripped of their possessions and kin, Felipe and Vivian stewed in the cauldron of resentment, heralding a tempest of bloodshed that would etch the Espinozas' name into the annals of the American frontier, a tale of rage and revenge that history would soon not forget. The ominous overture had played. The stage was now set for the macabre symphony of the Bloody Espinozas. During the harrowing period of the Espinoza brothers' reign of terror on the American frontier, a series of gruesome murders unfolded, leaving an indelible mark on the history of the Colorado Territory. The wave of violence began on March 16, 1863, when Franklin Bruce bid farewell to his bride in Canyon City, only to meet a tragic fate on his journey to the Hardscrabble Creek sawmill. Bruce's life was abruptly cut short, discovered by horrified neighbors who stumbled upon his lifeless body. His heart bore the fatal mark of a gunshot, and he lay naked, grotesquely mutilated, and a cross etched into his chest with a crude knife. In the following days, the relentless spree of brutality continued its merciless course. On March 18, 1863, Henry Harkins met his demise near Canyon City, at his home in the vicinity of present-day Colorado Springs. His end was marked by a gunshot to the forehead, and a gruesome display of violence ensued, as an axe cleaved his head open. The encroaching terror reached its tendrils to Wilkerson Pass, about 50 miles west of present-day Colorado Springs, where James Adelman fell victim to the marauding murderers in the ensuing weeks. The landscape of the American frontier became increasingly stained with blood, and the senseless loss of life continued unabated. As April dawned, the bloodstained trail led to the encampment outside of Fairplay, where Jacob Binkley faced a fatal gunshot in the back. His partner, Abram Shoup, suffered a cruel fate himself, enduring 3 stabbing wounds before a desperate escape attempt led him down a treacherous 400-yard gulch. Shoup succumbed to exhaustion and blood loss, lying helplessly on the ground, surrounded by an infinite expanse of frontier wilderness. The actual town of Fairplay, once a haven for miners seeking fortune, witnessed yet another massacre in April 1863 that claimed the lives of 5 miners. One unfortunate soul met a particularly gruesome end, as he was chased down a mountain, shot in the back, and butchered by a tomahawk. Some victims were discovered with sticks protruding from bullet holes in their foreheads, shaped like crucifixes, the ghastly signature of the bloody Espinoza's warpath. The ominous list of victims continued to grow as April unfolded. On the 25th, Bill Carter met his demise north of Fairplay, falling prey to the ruthless assassins. The following day, April 26, 1863, witnessed the cold-blooded murder of Frederick Lehman and Sol Sega. Legend tells of another crucifix carved into one victim's chest, while the other one suffered a horrific fate, his head crushed to a pulp by a merciless rock. In the waning days of April 1863, the noose of justice tightened around the infamous Espinoza brothers. The culmination of their malevolent activities reached a critical juncture with the attempted murder of Edward Metcalf, a lumberman traversing the road east of Fairplay. Metcalf's life hung in precarious balance as a rifle ball collided with his chest. Yet fate intervened in an unexpected form. A copy of President Abraham Lincoln's recent Emancipation Proclamation, dutifully tucked into Metcalf's breast pocket. Miraculously, the folded papers halted the bullet's deadly trajectory. In the chaos that ensued, Metcalf's oxen, startled by the gunfire, bolted down the road, carrying him to safety. It was during this tumultuous incident that witnesses, including Metcalf and another man, caught a glimpse of 2 Mexicans emerging from the nearby timber, identified later as the Espinozas. The descriptions provided by the witnesses proved to be an uncanny match, sealing the Espinozas' identities as the perpetrators. In the subsequent weeks, a determined posse of volunteers, numbering 17 men and led by the resolute John McCannon, swiftly organized in the California Gulch Mining District. Crossing Weston Pass into the ominous expanse of South Park, their ranks swelled as additional men joined the pursuit. Embarking on a cold May morning, the posse navigated the unforgiving terrain, tracking the Espinoza's trail through soft, wet ground, discovering abandoned campsites marked by smoldering ash and fire rings. The tension escalated as they closed in on their elusive prey. On the dawn of May 8th, the posse, stationed above a gulch near 4 Mile Creek, observed 2 hobbled horses without their riders in sight. A strategic decision split the posse into 2 groups, advancing from opposite directions. Vivian Espinoza, oblivious to the impending doom, emerged from a thicket to attend to his horse. In a fateful moment, a vigilante named Joe Lamb fired a shot that found its mark, hitting Vivian on his left side. Undeterred, the wounded outlaw retaliated, firing his pistol indiscriminately. The tide turned decisively when another vigilante, Fred Carter, aimed his rifle and delivered the fatal blow, the bullet piercing Vivian's face between his eyes. As the life drained from Vivian Espinoza, his brother Felipe, perched above in the thicket, witnessed the tragedy unfold. The posse hesitated, uncertain of Felipe's allegiance, as they couldn't make heads or tails of his identity. Could it be the missing brother, or one of the unannounced posse members? Rising from his position, it was none other than Felipe Espinoza. He fired a futile volley of shots from his vantage point, but missed his targets. In a desperate bid for escape, Felipe fled into the rugged canyon, leaving the American frontier forever changed by the demise of one of its most notorious figures. In the aftermath of Vivian Espinoza's demise, yet another grim chapter unfolded as vigilantes, driven by a thirst for retribution and a sense of justice, descended upon the remnants of the Espinoza brothers' existence. Days after their fatal encounter, the vigilantes meticulously plundered the Espinoza's possessions, unearthing countless trinkets and personal effects belonging to the men who had fallen victim to the ruthless duo. It was during this sifting through the spoils that the vigilantes, for the first time, learned of the Espinoza's names, adding a sobering human dimension to the previously faceless perpetrators of violence. Upon their return to Cannon City, a chilling revelation emerged. The Espinozas, in their reign of terror, had claimed the lives of at least 12 men up to that point. Reality, however, would later prove to be even more stark. In the wake of Vivian's death, Felipe Espinoza took to the written word, addressing a letter to John Evans, articulating a haunting narrative of familial loss and the perceived injustices that fueled their murderous spree. In his letter, Felipe laid bare the Espinoza's motivations, attributing their actions to the devastation wrought upon their families by the Americans who had stripped away their belongings, leaving them destitute. In the letter he wrote, "Americans ruined our families. They took everything in our house, first our beds and our blankets, then our provisions. These were the reasons we had to go out and kill Americans, revenge for the infamies committed on our families. Pardon us for what we have done and give us our liberty, so that no officer will have anything to do with us, for also in killing, one gains his liberty. I am aware that you know of some I have killed, but of others you don't know. It is a sufficient number, however. Ask if any other 2 men have killed as many men as the Espinozas." With a brazen assertion, he claimed responsibility for a staggering toll, asserting, "We have killed 32, a chilling testament to the extent of their deadly exploits. As the summer of 1863 unfolded, Felipe Espinoza embarked on a macabre journey, recruiting an unnamed teenager, sometimes referred to as Jose, whom we refer to as Kid, believed to be his sister's son. Together, he and his nephew traversed the vast expanse of the territory, periodically returning to the family plaza to deliver trinkets and letters to Felipe's wife, offering a stark contrast between the domestic and the malevolent aspects of their lives. The autumn of 1863 bore witness to a continuation of the Espinoza's blood-soaked saga, as 11 additional murders were attributed to Felipe and Kid. Their relentless pursuit of violence seemed unyielding, leaving a trail of devastation that underscored the pervasive fear and turmoil that marked the American frontier during this tumultuous period. Soon enough, though, the symphony's finale would echo across the territory. On October 11th, 1863, a somber incident unfolded near La Veta in present-day Colorado, making a critical juncture that would trigger the ultimate manhunt for Felipe Espinoza. A Hispano woman named Dolores Lola Sanchez and her white driver, Leander Philbrook, found themselves ambushed on their journey through the treacherous Sangre de Cristo Pass. The driver, Philbrook, managed a daring escape, but Sanchez was not as fortunate. Subdued by the two assailants, who identified themselves as the fugitive Espinosas, she was tightly bound with a harness and subjected to a harrowing assault. In a grim twist, the Espinosas refrained from ending Sanchez's life, displaying a perverse dichotomy between their actions and any semblance of Christian morality. After committing the reprehensible act, they bound her securely, pledging to return once they dealt with her white courier, Philbrook. However, Philbrook, a seasoned veteran of the 1st Colorado Volunteers, skillfully eluded his pursuers and reached Fort Garland by evening. Meanwhile, Sanchez managed to free herself and seek refuge from the Espinosa's clutches. The following morning, she flagged down patrolling troopers, who promptly brought her to the safety of the fort. It was at this critical juncture that Colonel Samuel F. Tappan, recognizing the urgency of the situation, summoned Tom Tobin, a legendary frontiersman, trapper, and world-class tracker. Tobin, no stranger to the dangers of the frontier, recounted the colonel's directive to investigate the woman's ordeal. Exhausted yet resolute, Sanchez detailed the disgraceful abuse inflicted by the Espinosas, providing Tobin with a vivid description of the fugitives. Tobin, eager to embark on a solo pursuit, was overruled by Colonel Tappan, who insisted he lead a detachment of troopers. The colonel's cautious advice lingered in the air. "Be careful not to make a mistake," he warned Tobin, adding, "and bring other parties," a clear allusion to the citizen posses that were actively scouring the region. In mid-October of 1863, an official posse comprising 15 soldiers under the seasoned leadership of Tom Tobin set forth on the arduous and perilous manhunt for the Espinosas. The unforgiving landscape of the Old West became the battleground for justice, as Tobin and his detachment were set to venture into the heart of the Sangre de Cristo Mountains, determined to bring an end to the reign of terror that had gripped the region. The manhunt, poised on the precipice of danger and uncertainty, marked a pivotal moment in the relentless pursuit of the Espinoza brothers. On the morning of October 12th, Tom Tobin, accompanied by Lieutenant Horace W. Baldwin and a detachment of 15 troopers, embarked on the daunting task of hunting down the notorious Felipe Espinoza. Among his companions were the skilled scout Timothy G. Graham, civilian scout Lauren Jenks, and a young teenager named Juan Montoya, whom Tobin had enlisted to assist with his horse during dismounts. Starting from the point where the Espinosas had intercepted Philbrook's buggy, Tobin meticulously scoured the terrain, employing techniques such as crawling on all fours and pressing his face to the earth until he identified the distinctive tracks of 2 ponies, signaling the presence of the fugitives. It was Montoya, the young assistant, who first spotted the Espinosas, conveying the sighting to Lieutenant Baldwin in Spanish. "Ahí van dos hombres a caballo." This translates to "there go 2 men on horseback," but Baldwin's unfortunate lack of Spanish proficiency resulted in a delayed response, and by the time he pursued the Espinosas, they had vanished over a ridge. The subsequent days saw the group dispersing into the mountains, following various intersecting tracks, with Jenks and most troopers becoming separated from the main detachment. Tobin, Baldwin, Montoya, Graham, and the remaining troopers navigated the challenging terrain, often resorting to crawling through dense underbrush. Camp was set on Levada Mountain, but the ensuing day yielded no success. It was on the 4th day the group stumbled upon oxen tracks near Levada Creek Pass, leading them to an abandoned ox by the trail. Tobin deduced that the Espinosas had likely taken another ox for sustenance, but the challenging terrain made tracking arduous. Guided by broken twigs, Tobin persisted, and on October 15th, additional trackers were enlisted to augment the search efforts. As the group ventured forth, Tobin observed birds circling in the sky, signaling the possibility of the Espinosas having killed one of their oxen. The journey led them to a clearing, where Tobin recognized squawking magpies, known as camp robbers, indicating the proximity of the Espinoza's camp. Proceeding cautiously, Tobin and Montoya crawled ahead, and a clandestine campsite emerged in the heart of the forest, strategically positioned for surveillance from all directions. Taking cover behind a fallen log, Tobin gained a visual on Felipe Espinoza, distinguished by a bushy beard and a deep scar on his left cheek. Felipe was engrossed in carving steaks from the ox's rear shank for roasting over the campfire. Unaware of his imminent fate, Felipe provided Tobin with the opportunity to take decisive action. As Felipe turned his attention to the meat, Tobin aimed and fired, hitting him in the chest. Felipe's response was a bellowing cry, invoking divine intervention with, "Jesus, favor me." He urged his nephew, Kid, to escape, declaring, "I am killed." Wounded, but not incapacitated, Felipe dragged himself across the woodlands, pursued by the posse. Tobin confronted him, initiating a brief conversation before the troopers closed in. Disarmed and defeated, Felipe uttered the word "Brutos" before attempting a futile retaliation. Tobin and his men unleashed a barrage of gunfire until Felipe was lifeless. Seizing the opportunity for definitive identification, Tobin decapitated Felipe, an act replicated with his nephew, ensuring the gruesome trophies were left at the site where the Espinosas had fallen. Among the remnants of the outlaw camp, Tobin and his party discovered Sanchez's personal effects, Felipe's diary, and various letters. The letters contained descriptions of brutal murders, alongside Felipe's self-justifying rhetoric for having killed Americans, 32 by his count. One peculiar letter, addressed to Felipe's wife, contained quasi-religious passages, invoking blessings from the Holy Mother Mary. That letter reads as follows: "I am blessed with the milk from the breast of the Holy Mother Mary. I am covered with the cloak of the Holy San Salvador. I am defended by the sword of the Holy Saint Paul. I am looking after animals and my enemies. They have hands and cannot touch me. They have feet and cannot catch me. They have eyes and cannot see me. They have ears and cannot hear me." Foregoing any ceremony, Tobin secured the severed heads in a gunny sack, attaching it to his saddle. Heading for Fort Garland, the group camped on the slopes of the Sangre de Cristo, arriving at the fort on October 16th. Colonel Tappan, the commanding officer, was not present upon their return, so Tobin waited in the commandant's office. When Tappan eventually arrived, he casually asked Tobin about the outcome of the manhunt. In a relaxed manner, Tobin rolled his heads from the sack, stating, "So-so." The gruesome revelation triggered shock among the officers' wives, with some fainting at the sight. Colonel Tappan, visibly affected, instructed his orderly to bury the severed heads. Felipe Nerio Espinoza's origins are traced to the El Rito unincorporated community, Rio Arriba County, New Mexico Territory, or according to some sources, Veracruz, Mexico. His parents, Pedro Ignacio Espinoza and Gertrudis Chavez, and his brother Vivian, constitute his familial background. The Mexican census of 1845 records the Espinoza family in El Rito, New Mexico. In 1860, the U.S. Census locates Felipe Nerio Espinoza in Conejos, San Fernando Valley, Taos, New Mexico, with a wife and 2 children. The initiation of the Espinoza brothers' violent activities lacks a conclusive explanation, though evidence suggests the U.S. Army sought their arrest for alleged local robberies. When the brothers resisted capture, punitive measures were taken, involving the burning of one of their homes and the confiscation of their property. This occurred on American soil following the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo in 1848, which transferred the region, along with its Hispanic settlers, to the United States after the Mexican-American War. Historical interpretations of the Espinoza's motivations present disparate narratives. One account posits a genesis rooted in the 1847 bombardment of Veracruz, Mexico, alleging that Felipe received a divine order to avenge his family members' deaths by killing 600 Americans. The Espinozas' resentment extended beyond personal loss to include disputes over their land grant in Conejos County, encroached upon by white settlers. An alternative narrative associates the Espinozas with the Penitente Brotherhood, a lay Roman Catholic sect operating independently of the local church. Although their affiliation remains uncertain, the prospect of Spanish-speaking Catholics supporting two Hispano murderers aligns with the prevalent belief among Anglo settlers that such gatherings posed a threat to American sovereignty. In the backdrop of the San Luis Valley, the Espinozas' actions unfolded within a context of societal indifference and prejudice. Media coverage, characterized by bias, marginalized the Hispano population, framing them as inconsequential to the broader development of Colorado territory. The Espinozas' murderous activities, entangled in sensationalism, engendered a narrative fraught with conflicting details. A deeper comprehension of the Espinozas' motivations remains elusive due to a dearth of historical documentation. Rumored artifacts, such as a memorandum book claimed by Colorado historian Frank Hall, have been lost. Wilbur Fisk Stone, a prominent observer of the Espinozas era, omitted their story from his extensive History of Colorado. According to historian Charles F. Price, the Espinozas' animosity towards Anglos and the U.S. burgeoned after the Mexican War, amid concerns over new laws and potential taxes under the U.S. government. Price contends that the Espinozas were part of a tax revolt, culminating in the killing of an American soldier, which triggered their subsequent violent spree. Alternatively, Edward Martinez attributes the Espinozas' vendetta to American greed, corruption, and the atrocities of the time. In the annals of history, the Espinozas' legacy prompts an inquiry into whether Colorado's Hispanos were considered so inconsequential that even their vigilante killers have largely been forgotten in the historical narrative. The Espinozas' story invites a nuanced examination, where themes of justice, vendetta, and survival intersect against the backdrop of an untamed frontier.